If you've been riding for decades, this leak probably won't shock you, but it finally proves what riders have been saying for years. Internal service and owner experience data from 2019 through 2024 shows Indian overtaking Harley in long-haul comfort and post-warranty reliability. And stick with me till the end, because we're going to break down the exact design and decision changes that caused this shift. So if you're riding a touring Harley today, you'll know whether to hold it, fix it, or start looking elsewhere. The leak that hit the industry like a hammer. The first hint of trouble did not come from a headline or an angry investor call. It came from a quiet file passed between two long-time industry analysts who had seen enough over the decades to know when something did not add up. One of them opened the document, read the first 3 lines, and swore under his breath. The numbers were not supposed to look like that. They showed a shift no one expected, not even the insiders who watch every quarter like a hawk. The file showed raw, unpolished data pulled straight from internal reporting channels. The kind companies pray never sees daylight. This one did. The leak itself was simple. A set of performance metrics comparing 2 American motorcycle giants over the past several years. The surprise was not that Harley was struggling in a few areas. Riders have heard hints of that for a while. The shock was who had pulled ahead and in which category. The analysts who first saw the numbers passed them along with a warning. This one is going to sting. Why it matters is straightforward. You do not need a corporate title to understand when a shift in the numbers means a shift in the road ahead. Evidence like this is the kind you feel in your gut, the kind that tells you the industry is not where you thought it was. And that brings us to the real punch buried inside the leak, because the most painful line in that file was tied to the one metric Harley was never supposed to lose. The metric Harley was never supposed to lose. For decades, Harley built its name on more than chrome and reputation. It built it on a riding experience that kept people loyal mile after mile. Comfort, dependability, long-distance ease, and that steady confidence only a well-sorted cruiser can give. Those were the pillars that kept riders coming back, especially the ones who knew what a real touring day feels like. So when the leak showed that Indian had overtaken Harley in the one category Harley guarded like a crown jewel, it hit harder than anyone predicted. The metric was not horsepower or styling or marketing reach. It was the lived experience of cruiser owners across thousands of real-world miles. Riders spoke through warranty claims, long-haul impressions, and the kind of honest feedback you only get from people who have burned enough fuel to know the truth by heart. And according to the leaked numbers, Indian had edged ahead in ways that were impossible to ignore. What made it shocking was how steady the shift appeared. This was not a one-year spike or a fluke survey. It was a pattern forming under the surface, hidden behind press releases and polished presentations. The kind of trend you only see when the curtain slips. For the first time in a long time, Harley did not hold the top slot in the category that mattered most to serious cruiser riders. But the leak did more than reveal a single lost metric. It exposed a changing market that had been quietly moving for years. If you want more straight talk on the shifts shaping American motorcycles, hit like and subscribe so you never miss the real story. And share your thoughts below, because veteran riders see patterns long before the industry admits them. The cruiser market shift, hidden in plain sight. If you look at cruiser sales over the past decade, the numbers tell a story long before companies are ready to admit it. Riders in the United States have been adjusting their buying habits, and the shift has nothing to do with flashy ads or loud promises. It comes down to value, comfort, and the feeling you get when a bike fits your needs without demanding more than it gives. Bit by bit, riders have steered toward machines offering more miles per dollar, more comfort per inch, and more dependability per season. The leak confirmed what many riders already suspected. The cruiser segment has been drifting toward brands willing to evolve while keeping the spirit of the long road lifestyle intact. And while Harley still commands respect, the leaked data showed that the landscape beneath the surface has been changing faster than anyone acknowledged out loud. The surprising part was not that riders were exploring options. It was how consistent the pattern had become. Year after year, more Americans were choosing cruisers that delivered strong comfort, simple ownership, and steady performance without the price tag creeping higher than a working rider's budget can justify. The leak turned those hunches into proof. It became clear that the cruiser market had already shifted. The industry simply had not caught up to the truth. And that shift leads straight into Harley's toughest realization. Somewhere along the way, it misread the riders who carried the brand for generations. Everything I personally use on the road is linked in the description. Take a look, then let's keep going. Harley's blind spot. Misreading its most loyal riders. Harley has weathered storms before, but its latest challenge does not come from the outside. It comes from a slow drift inside the company's own decisions. Over time, Harley leaned heavily into image, lifestyle branding, and premium pricing, assuming the core rider base would follow no matter what. But riders who spend real time on the road care about practical things. A seat that stays comfortable past the first 200 miles, suspension that does not punish older backs, and engines that stay cool and predictable on long summer stretches. The leak did not mention these details directly, but the implications were loud enough. Many longtime riders felt the brand shifting toward showroom shine instead of road-ready refinement. That does not mean Harley abandoned its heritage. It means the balance tipped, and the people who notice these changes first are the ones who maintain their own machines and count on them for serious miles. Price increases added pressure. A bike can look sharp, but when the cost climbs faster than the improvements riders actually feel, frustration grows. Meanwhile, comfort and dependability started getting overshadowed by styling updates and marketing language. The leaked data did not create this concern. It simply exposed it for all to see. And now that the truth is out, the next part of the story reveals just how deep the shift goes. Indian's quiet strategy after 2015. Indian's rise did not come from a loud announcement or a big marketing push. It came from a long stretch of steady decisions that put engineering first and corporate pride second. Around 2015, the company shifted into a methodical rhythm, investing in the parts of a cruiser that riders actually feel hour after hour. They refined ergonomics, so the bikes fit real bodies, not showroom mannequins. They dialed in suspension that could handle rough pavement without punishing the rider. They put serious work into heat management and throttle response. Nothing flashy, nothing rushed, but everything pointed toward a machine built to be lived with, not just looked at. This is how trust gets built, mile by mile. When a bike feels right on the 1,000th mile as much as it did on the first, riders notice. Indian avoided the trap of chasing every trend or throwing every idea into a single model year. They kept the core simple, strong, and familiar to the veteran rider's hands. More importantly, Indian avoided the corporate mistakes that creep in when a company becomes too focused on quarterly wins. They did not inflate prices to chase prestige. They did not downplay feedback that pointed toward mechanical improvements. They listened, adjusted, and kept their priorities grounded. The leaked numbers proved those decisions paid off. But while Indian built momentum the slow and steady way, Harley hit a wall overseas that revealed a deeper structural problem. Harley's painful failure in the world's largest motorcycle market. India became the world's largest motorcycle market in 2017, surpassing China with a massive base of riders who depend on two-wheelers for everyday life. The scale is almost hard to imagine unless you see the traffic yourself. Hundreds of millions of bikes fill the roads, creating a market any global manufacturer would want to be part of. Harley saw that potential and made a push, hoping the volume would help stabilize declining numbers elsewhere. The problem was simple. The bikes were priced far beyond what the typical Indian rider could afford. The least expensive Harley model in India cost several times more, than the median motorcycle on the street. In a country where practicality drives nearly every purchase decision, a premium heavyweight cruiser was out of reach for the overwhelming majority of riders. High taxes, high maintenance costs, and lower fuel efficiency only made the gap wider. Royal Enfield filled that space with ease. The company had history, local understanding, and a lineup perfectly matched to the market's expectations. Their machines delivered character without breaking the bank. In 2019, Harley's sales in India fell more than 20%, continuing a downward slide from the previous year. The failure was not about brand image, it was structural. Harley simply misread what the market demanded, and the numbers reflected it with brutal clarity. That global lesson did not stay isolated, because other manufacturers were already watching Indian, rather than Harley, for cues on what riders wanted next. Competitors who followed Indian's blueprint, not Harley's. Across the industry, engineers and designers pay close attention to shifts in rider behavior. When Indian began gaining ground through a blend of comfort, practicality, and solid engineering, other manufacturers noticed. BMW expanded its mid-weight offerings. Honda sharpened its approach to affordable touring and standard models. Yamaha focused on versatility, delivering bikes that handled both city miles and highway stretches without punishing the rider or the wallet. The momentum pointed in one direction. Practicality was overtaking prestige as the driving force behind design decisions. The mid-weight segment became the real battlefield. Riders were choosing machines that balanced power, comfort, and price in a way that matched everyday riding needs. These bikes were easier to manage in traffic, more fuel efficient, and still capable of long-distance touring when set up correctly. They appealed to riders who wanted quality without unnecessary bulk or cost. Indian had already set the tone with models that fit this trend naturally. What stood out in the leak was not that Indian performed well, it was that other brands aligned their strategies closer to Indian's approach than Harley's. The heavy emphasis on user-friendly ergonomics, manageable weight, and refined engineering became the norm. The prestige first model simply did not drive the same momentum anymore. The industry's direction had changed, and the leaked data confirmed who had guided that shift. Still, the clearest sign of this change showed up not in engineering decisions, but in what was happening on showroom floors across the country. The dealer divide. No one expected. Dealerships often reveal the truth long before corporate reports do. The atmosphere on the floor, the number of walk-ins, the questions riders ask, and the service tickets stacked behind the counter tell a story spreadsheets cannot capture. Over the past few years, a noticeable divide began forming between Harley dealerships and their Indian counterparts, and the leaked data finally explained why. Harley dealers faced a growing sense of uncertainty. Inventory turned slower than expected. Some models sat long enough for riders to wonder what was holding them back. Service departments kept steady work, but not always tied to enthusiastic new buyers. The confidence that once defined the brand felt thinner, even if the walls still held decades of heritage. Indian dealers, meanwhile, showed a different energy. Foot traffic rose, test rides increased, new owners came back with fewer complaints and more curiosity about accessories or long-term add-ons. The leaks indicated stronger retention numbers and healthier model movement, all pointing to rising momentum that carried from the showroom to the road. None of this reflects poorly on the people working in Harley dealerships. They are the backbone of the brand and know their customers better than any executive ever will. The challenge comes from the shift in what riders are looking for and which bikes deliver it most consistently. The divide was not about loyalty, it was about momentum, and the leak made that impossible to ignore. And with that momentum exposed, the fallout ahead would reshape more than just yearly reports. The moment investors realized something was wrong. When the leak surfaced, the first wave of shock did not come from riders or dealerships. It came from the analysts who track the financial pulse of the motorcycle industry. For years, Harley maintained a reputation as a stable anchor in a shifting landscape. Even when sales dipped, investors trusted the brand's long-term strength. But the leaked data cut straight through that confidence. Market watchers who had spent decades reading balance sheets could see the trend forming, and it was not in Harley's favor. The slipping confidence was not about a single bad quarter or a temporary stumble. It was the realization that a competitor once considered secondary now had the momentum to challenge Harley's core position. Long-term direction suddenly came under scrutiny. Analysts began asking whether Harley had a plan strong enough to withstand a market that was changing faster than expected. Questions rose about whether the company had waited too long to adjust its priorities, and whether the leadership recognized how serious the shift had become. Wall Street does not react to emotion, it reacts to patterns, and the leaked metrics showed a pattern no investor could ignore. Indian was no longer a minor player. It was a real contender, with growing strength across multiple segments. The consequence was immediate. A sense of unease that replaced the old assumption that Harley's dominance was guaranteed. While investors processed the numbers from a distance, the conversation among riders took on a much more personal tone. Rider reaction across forums, garages, and parking lots. Riders did not need a financial chart to understand what was happening. The leak simply confirmed what many had been whispering in forums and garages for years. Online threads lit up with long posts from seasoned riders who had watched the industry shift one model year at a time. Some spoke with nostalgia, remembering when every new Harley felt like an event, and the price tag matched the pride they felt rolling out of the dealership. Others took a more practical view, pointing out that comfort and dependability now mattered more than the image attached to the badge. The tension between nostalgia and practicality cut through almost every conversation. Riders respected the legacy, but many felt the weight of rising costs and shifting priorities. They talked about bikes that looked sharp, but did not always feel right on long trips. They compared ownership experiences, sharing miles, repairs, and the small details that tell you whether a bike was built with real riders in mind. The frustration was not loud or dramatic. It was steady and familiar, the kind that comes from people who have spent enough time on the road to recognize when something has changed. The leak offered proof, but the emotion came from experience. Riders who had lived through several cycles of the industry knew the signs. They understood when a company drifts off course, even if it takes years for the evidence to show. And while riders voiced their concerns openly, the impact inside Harley's own factories carried a different kind of weight. If you value honest breakdowns grounded in decades of riding, make sure you subscribe. This channel cuts through corporate noise and tracks the changes that actually matter to riders who know the road, the machines, and the truth beneath the headlines. Harley's own workforce feeling the pressure. Inside the production plants, the fallout from the leak hit with a ripple of tension. The workforce has always taken pride in building machines that represent American craftsmanship. Each line worker, machinist, welder, and inspector carries their own piece of that legacy. But pride does not erase pressure, especially when whispers about shifting market momentum reach the shop floor. Employees began to wonder what the leaked data meant for their future, and whether the company could adapt fast enough to protect the jobs tied to decades of tradition. Union representatives faced tough conversations. Concerns rose about whether production might shift more work overseas, or whether certain lines might be scaled back if sales projections changed. Outsourcing fears have lingered around the industry for years, but the leak gave those worries a sharper edge. When a brand's direction becomes uncertain, the people on the ground feel it before anyone else. Morale did not collapse, but it tightened. Workers focused on their craft, knowing their role is at the heart of what makes a brand endure. Still, questions moved quietly through break rooms and late shifts. Would leadership respond quickly enough? Would the next generation of models restore confidence? Or would slow decisions leave the workforce carrying the burden of choices made far above them? Those questions led straight into the final piece of fallout: the change this leak forces across the engineering world. Engineering priorities shift for the entire industry. Engineers study trends with the same seriousness riders give to maintenance. They look for stress points, long-term reliability, and design choices that will shape the next decade of machines. When the leak revealed Indian's rise and Harley's vulnerabilities, it forced engineering teams across the industry to reconsider their direction. What had once been optional became essential. The focus sharpened toward mid-weight models, dependable performance, and comfort that lasts over hundreds of miles instead of just the first ride. Brands began rethinking their investments, focusing on bikes that feel natural and balanced on any road. Fundamentals like heat control, seat design, vibration management, and predictable throttle response outweighed flashy extras. The leak reinforced that truth. This shift does not end heavyweight cruisers. It redirects engineering toward real-world demands, honoring heritage by building machines that earn their place mile after mile. The leak did not create this future, it revealed it. And now that the consequences are clear, the final question becomes how far those ripples reach. How the global motorcycle world now sees the American power shift. Across the global motorcycle community, the leaked data sent a quiet but unmistakable signal. For decades, when riders abroad thought of American motorcycles, one name dominated the conversation. Harley represented a certain image, a certain sound, and a certain culture that stood apart from anything built elsewhere. But the perception is shifting, and the leak only confirmed what many international analysts had already begun to suspect. American identity in the motorcycle world no longer rests on a single brand. Indian's rise has reshaped how global markets view American heavyweights. Its blend of heritage, engineering focus, and long-distance strength resonates even in cultures without Harley's nostalgic ties. Indian is now seen as carrying the torch into a new era, not replacing Harley, but expanding the American footprint. The leaked numbers confirmed its growing momentum, showing that the American story abroad now features two major contenders instead of one. That global acknowledgement pushed another part of the conversation into the spotlight: how political and economic forces inside the United States interpret Harley's struggles. Political and economic eyes turn toward Harley's struggles. When a brand becomes a cultural symbol, its challenges do not stay within the company walls. Harley's identity has long been tied to American manufacturing, blue-collar pride, and the broader narrative of domestic industry. So, as the leaked data revealed deeper issues in Harley's direction, political and economic voices began paying closer attention. Lawmakers who care about manufacturing jobs saw the shifting momentum as a sign that long-standing assumptions might no longer hold true. Tariffs and trade policies grew more complicated as Harley's production shifts reignited political tension, and the leak deepened the debate. If a competitor rises while Harley struggles, policymakers must balance protecting jobs with allowing needed evolution. Harley's symbolic weight adds pressure, since its setbacks ripple through connected industries. The leaked data sharpened these discussions, reminding leaders that stability requires clear-eyed evaluation, not nostalgia. And those broader debates feed directly into the wider American motorcycle economy. Ripple effects across the Americans. Motorcycle economy. The motorcycle industry does not operate in isolation. Every shift in demand, brand strength, or buying patterns affects a wide network of suppliers, aftermarket companies, service shops, and training schools. When the leaked data showed a realignment in momentum, the impact touched each layer of the ecosystem. Part suppliers began reevaluating which models would sustain steady orders over the coming years. Companies tied to exhaust systems, saddlebags, suspension upgrades, and other accessories saw the potential for a reshaped demand curve. Touring culture also feels the change. Events, rallies, and travel businesses connected to long-distance riding depend on bikes that make those journeys enjoyable and accessible. If more riders lean toward machines offering balanced comfort and manageable cost, the touring economy adjusts with them. Rental fleets, guided tour operations, and regional riding destinations watch these trends closely because they shape the kind of bikes people will bring to the open road. Financing companies and training schools feel the momentum shift as brand changes reshape loans, values, and the bikes new riders learn on. The leaked data gives them a clearer view of a future where Indian shapes demand. These ripples move quietly, but reshape the foundation, leading to the real question: what this turning point means for American motorcycling's future. What this turning point means for the future of the V-twin legacy. The leak did more than reveal numbers. It marked a crossroads for American motorcycling. For decades, Harley carried the burden and the pride of representing the nation's riding culture. Now, with Indian proving its strength, the legacy is expanding rather than fading. This moment offers a chance to reflect on what the future may hold without falling into despair or wishful thinking. The V-twin spirit is not disappearing. It is evolving. Harley faces a path that demands honest assessment and renewed commitment to building machines that serve the rider first. Indian's rise does not erase Harley's heritage, but it does challenge the company to reconnect with the fundamentals that once made it untouchable. If Harley responds with clarity and respect for its own legacy, it can continue shaping the culture as it always has. Indian has stepped into a role few expected, carrying American engineering forward and keeping competition sharp. Two strong brands now shape the road ahead, each pushing the other to build better machines. The leak is not a verdict, but a reminder: the future belongs to those who honor the rider, respect the craft, and make purposeful choices today. At the end of the day, this leak isn't about brand loyalty. It's about real miles and honest machines. Harley built legends once, and Indian proved you can still do it today if you listen to riders. I want to hear from you. What year and model have you put serious miles on? And did you feel this shift yourself? If this breakdown helped, hit like, subscribe, and keep the real rider conversation going.